Hi friends, welcome to the 16th edition of Coffee DBG. So this is an interactive section which deals with a particular topic, and this happens first Wednesday of every month. So is there any new faces here? New to the, yeah, please introduce.
My name is Vineet, actually working with a company called Spark Nova here.
My name is Manu. I'm working also with Spark Nova.
My name is Shyam. I'm working in TCS, I'm part of development team.
I'm Yasmin, working in quality data systems and solutions.
Jayalakshmi, working in quality data systems and solutions. My name is Ashwati, working in quality data systems and solutions.
Yeah, welcome you all. So we had a try series based on the front-end development using JavaScript, and now we have planned to have another try series based on front-end development using HTML and CSS. So we have 4 topics covered in this session. The first one is evolution of HTML and CSS, how the HTML and CSS have developed in the past years. The second one is very important one, that is browser high-level architecture. So we want to know how this browser works in HTML and CSS. The third one is trends and updates in HTML5 and CSS3. The last one that is very helpful, that is basic features of CSS3 and tools. As you know, we start all the Coffee DBG with TechBites. That's a small session which deals with technical updates and news. So I invite Godwin to have TechBites.
Okay, thank you, Gene, for the nice introduction. And we are going to the first session. This is called TechBites. I am myself Godwin, senior software developer at DBG. Let's move on to the first slide. This is regarding Microsoft. Microsoft is going to unveil their newest Windows operating system, and this one is they are not yet named the latest version, and it is speculated that it may be either Windows 8.2 or Windows 9, and this one will be the beta version. This is going to release by the end of this month. And this, the next one is Gmail API. Using the Gmail API, you can have access to the Gmail inbox and also send mails. Currently, we are using the IMAP and SMTP protocols for communication between the mail clients as well as and to the mailing servers. And this IMAP is developed way back in 1986, and there was not much developments or upgradation for this system or protocol for the past few years. And in such a scenario, the Google has come up with a new API called Gmail API. The Gmail API is very much flexible and it is RESTful, and the response is in the form of XML or JSON format. And using this interface, Gmail API interface, you can access to threads, messages, and drafts, history, etc., and labels also. Right now, they are giving support only to the Gmail server. But maybe in future, that can be also be possible. And this one is very fast as compared to the IMAP sports, and it can handle a lot more messages, and that will be in a very more efficiently and more easily. The next one is regarding a gadget. This is called wearable device charger. I think nowadays we are going to live in a age of wearable gadgets. Can anyone give some name of any gadgets, wearable gadget? Okay, Google Plus, I think that's the most popular one. There are other wearable gadgets like smart watches are there, then smart rings are there, and wristbands, smart wristbands are also there. And this one is marketed by a company called Q Device, and it's called the Q bracelet, and it comes in the form of a jewelry bracelet. Which can be wear on your wrist. And by unfolding this bracelet, you can find a hidden micro USB charger, which can be used to charge Android device as well as iPhone. Then this one is made up of lithium ion battery, and it takes around 90 minutes to charge itself, and it can hold the charge up to 30 days in standby mode. Okay. The next one is C++ regarding the programming domain. The C++ is going to release their newest version, and they are named it as C++ 14. Anyone knows the current stable version of C++? Okay, it's C++ 11. And actually the draft has been almost finalized, and they are going for the final touch-ups before the release. And we are expecting the release of this C++ version by the end of this month, I mean September last. Okay, the next one is a next generation solar panel. Okay, this was developed by a group of researchers in Michigan State University, and it is completely transparent like a plain glass. Normally the solar panels of this category are either translucent or opaque because they are embedded with strips of photovoltaic strips, and because of that they are translucent or opaque. And how does this works? For example, when this one is exposed to a sunlight, it will detect the infrared rays on the sunlight and convert this energy, this one to energy. And this was the final slide. And okay, by this I am concluding my session on TechBites. I hope you have got some idea or developments that are happening around us in the technology domain. And the next session will be regarding the evolution of HTML and CSS. And for this, I would like to invite Ganesh.
Thank you, Godwin. Good evening, all. Let's check out the evolution of HTML and CSS. Myself, Ganesh Kumar, working here in DBG as a UI developer. So before we start, I hope we all know who is the father of World Wide Web or HTML. Anyone? Yeah, right. Tim Berners-Lee. He was a physicist and a contractor at CERN. CERN is an organization in Europe for nuclear research. In 1980, he proposed and prototyped a system called Enquire, which was a system for communicating between the researchers in CERN. And in 1989, he proposed an internet-based hypertext system. This was the very first hypertext system that was based on internet. And in 90, he specified this hypertext system as HTML. He also wrote a browser software to display that document, and he also developed a server software to host that. This was a very fast web page he created. It's still accessible in CERN website. Very basic layout, right? And this was a very fast web server he used to host that document. And it is still up and running. In 91, the first publicly available description for HTML was a document called HTML tags. There were 18 elements, around 18 elements that time, like HTML, head, body, etc. And in 92, he released HTML version 1. There were 22 elements that time, added 4 or more elements. In 94, HTML2 released. The main feature of HTML2 was using of image tag. And the one and only attribute to image tag was alt tag. No width or height, like something like that. In the same year, Hakon Viumli, nice name, right? Hakon Viumli, he proposed the concept of cascading style sheets. He was working with Tim Berners-Lee in CERN that time. In 95, HTML3 released. In HTML3, the main feature was introduction to tables. At that time, I think table is not only used for tabular data, table is used for the layout purposes also. And in 1996, web design is born. How? They were staring at me, that thinking, what a stupid question, Ganesh. Web design is born. How? Not like that. It's said to be like that because in 1996, HTML 3.2 released. With this release, it became possible to set the font, colors, and all the related things. So a complete control over the presentation look. That's why it's said to be web designers era. And in the same year, Ginsberg Bose, who was a computer scientist, joined W3C to work on CSS. He is a former chairman and current W3C staff contact for the CSS working group. In the same year, CSS1 released. The main features of CSS1 was font properties such as typeface, color for text and related backgrounds, etc. Then spacing for letters, words, line heights, etc. Then alignment of images, paragraph, etc. Then margin, border, and body. In 1998, CSS2 released. The main feature was positioning of elements, like absolute, relative, fixed, and then its C index also. Then the concept of media types, support for oral style sheets, bidirectional text, etc. came in with this release. Then font properties such as shadows introduced with this release. In the same year, HTML4 released. It was not a major release. It had some bugs. So soon after this release, all the developers started working to get ready for the next release. And this is a time for DHTML and HTML. DHTML or dynamic HTML is a umbrella term, which means a combination of a static markup language like HTML, a client-side scripting language like JavaScript, a presentation definition language like CSS, etc. And while XHTML is a reformulation of HTML4 as an application of extensible markup language. This is a main difference between HTML, DHTML, and XHTML. In 1999, HTML 4.01 released. This was a major release, and this is the most stable version ever. All the bugs found in HTML4 got fixed with this release. And in 2004, CSS 2.1 released. This was also a bug fix release. That poorly supported elements in CSS2 got fixed in this release, and all the other bugs fixed. In absolute positioning came in this CSS2 release. CSS2 release, 98. Yeah. Positioning, absolute complete positioning related. In 2008, HTML5 published as a working draft. HTML5 still is in its development stage, and hoping by end of this year, it will get recommended by W3C. And they are also planning for a release of HTML 5.1 as a working draft in 2016. Then CSS3, it's also is in its development stage. And CSS3 divides the document into modules, separate modules like font module, media query module for responsiveness, etc. And this module helps to extend the features defined in CSS2. So W3C and WordWeb. W3C or World Wide Web Consortium is a main international standards organization for World Wide Web. And WordWeb, Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, is a community of people interested in evolving HTML and related technologies. So I hope you got an overview of HTML and CSS evolution, right? So the current web design trend is absolutely HTML5 and CSS3. We can have a session on trends in HTML5 and CSS3, which will be a session handled by Mr. Rahul. And before that, we should know how these stuff work or how these things get rendered in a browser. For that, I would like to invite Mr. Shiraz, team lead from DBG. He will be taking the next session for browser high-level architecture.
Thank you, Ganesh. Hi all. Today I'll be discussing about browser high-level architecture and main flow. Wait. Slide on the reload again. Okay. Today I'll be discussing about these things: the browser's high-level architecture and the main flow. Okay. Why should I learn all this stuff? Simple. If you learn these things, you can develop websites with best practices, then write highly optimizable code, which will help you to make your websites faster, more user friendly, and stuff like that. Okay. And today we'll be talking about these browsers, the modern latest versions of these browsers, and first of all, the browser's high-level structure. Okay. These are the components which works together to render the HTML, and with the help of these components, the browser renders your HTML page and outputs it to the screen. On the bottom, we have the networking layer. The networking layer, what actually does is it processes your HTTP request, and next to that we have the JS interpreter. It's also called as JS engine. And next we have the UI backend. What actually UI backend is? It's a set of widgets. For example, combo boxes, checkboxes, and etc. etc. Usually, browser creates all these stuffs with the help of the capabilities of the operating system's UI methods. Okay. On the right, we have the data persistence layer. What actually this does is it's used to store data. Previously, it was something like cookies, and now we have more sophisticated data like what to say, web storage, local storage, file system, and so on, so on, so. And on the top we have the user interface. It's the browser's user interface, which contains the browser's back menu, forward menu, then bookmarking, close, open, and stuff like that. And we have the render engine. This is the the important part of the browser. Maybe we can say it as a heart of the browser, and which renders your HTML and outputs it to the screen. And finally, the browser engine, actually what it does, it's something like it works as a mediator between the render engine and the user interface. And these are the components which is there in the browser, the basic components which are there in the browser. And yeah, sure. Any questions or something? Anything?
So are you able to visualize that what is the browser and browser has different things? We can just say theory class and we just
It's just
be able to understand that
what are
user
things.
interface is what we see whenever we open a browser. We have a URL area where we can type it and some page get loaded.
Oh, okay. So user interface is whatever we see when we click a browser, and we have a place where we can type in a URL, Then when we type a URL, what happens is that it uses its networking part to send the request, identify the server, and get the response. And once they get the response, the browser engine passes it to the rendering engine to render that HTML. It is just a set of code, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that they get as the response, right? So rendering engine has the capability to render it, and it has to paint it and show that picture to us, or show that website to us. So rendering engine uses UI backend to get, that is, if there is any form elements or some predefined things, that is from the UI backend it takes. This is the, for example, in Safari, in Mac OS, it may be that is a drop down will be displayed in one method, and the UI for that in another operating system might be different. It is just because this UI backend uses the operating system's capabilities to create those elements. And whenever there is a JavaScript, it sends to the JS interpreter, and that is the JavaScript engine that we discussed over the previous sessions. That is our different JavaScript engines or JavaScript interpreters, which is used to render the JavaScript. And rendering engine does the layouting, that is how to draw it, and give it back to the browser engine, which displays it back in our screen, in our browser screen. So rendering engine is the part which handles the layouting, the painting, etc. So that is a browser's high-level architecture, and that is, it will be better, that is, if you could know how exactly this rendering engine work. So Shiraz will be going to discuss about that, right?
Anything? Okay.
Because it is an open interactive session, it is not someone coming and taking a seminar and you are just attending. And we are, that is, we just want it to be an entry level type of questions are also invited, because normally when we go for a seminar somewhere, we always hesitate to ask questions because we feel as if, okay, whether I'm wrong or not. But here you do not have to have such hesitations. Anything that you couldn't get, just shoot out the question, and we will try to answer it. Okay.
Okay. Then about rendering engines. Okay. Different browsers use different rendering engines, and for Firefox they are using Gecko. For Internet Explorer they're using Trident, WebKit for Safari, and Blink for newer versions of Opera and Chrome. Actually, Blink is a forked version of WebKit, and around 4.5 millions of files, millions of lines have been removed from the WebKit browser, and around 7,000, maybe around 7,000 files was removed to create that rendering engine. And actually, Google did that fork and created the Blink rendering engine. Hope all is clear. Okay, then the next is the browser's main flow. How a browser work in its background. First, what happens when someone queries a URL? What happens? Any?
In which term you are asking when you type that actually?
Yes. What happens when I type www.google.com?
What is it? Okay. Okay. This whatever I'm going to tell, it may not be relevant. Okay, fine. It first goes and hits the DNS engine to get the IP address, and using the IP address, it will connect to the corresponding server, and it gets the data. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was correct. First, the browsers, the URL get routed to its server. Server sends a response back, and that response contains something assets that must be loaded into the browser. for example, CSS, JavaScript, images, HTML, and stuff like that. The first thing which browser does is it creates or it passes the HTML and creates a tree called the DOM tree. From there, the another step is taking, and that's conversion of the DOM tree to another tree called render tree. From there, actually, the render tree goes to a process called layout. We'll be discussing later. And finally, the layout gets painted into the browser. That's what simply happens when a user queries a URL. First of all, I'd like parsing. Parsing is converting HTML code to a render tree. It's the first step which happens. And HTML can't be parsed like any other languages, just like Java or C or something like that, because it's because of its reentrant nature. Because it can be, the rendered output can be changed with the help of some JavaScript or something like that. The rendered output can be changed. Okay, so what this guys does is, there's a component which the parsing is done with the co-working of two components. One is a tokenizer and another is a parser. What the tokenizer does is, it knows how to split the HTML inputs into words which the browser knows. Then a tree called render tree is, DOM tree is created, and the parser creates the DOM tree. It's a recursive process. It goes and goes and goes and creates the tree. Elements get added into the render tree, and this is what it's happening through the network. Input gets here, the tokenizer, it's reached to a tokenizer, and tokenizer splits it, that it's a recursive process, and last the render tree is created. These are the tokens. HTML get converted into HTML element, head into head element, and so and so and so.
So it is just like creating the containers. For example, HTML is the outermost container, and there is a head container, then a title, body container, then there is a P, there is a div. All those things are nested properly. That is what is inside what. That is determined on the DOM tree, and that is what the creation of DOM tree is. So it is just without applying the dimension, it just mentioned that this box is inside this. And for identifying that box, tokenizer is used. Tokenizer considers HTML as the outer box, that is the HTML element. So it has a set of predefined elements, and each tag is converted to a token, and these tokens are linked together in a DOM tree. So this is the outermost, that is the top layer is the HTML element, then below that there is a head element and maybe the title element. So how, that is how it forms the DOM tree. So is there any question? You are getting right?
This is the DOM tree. Here the a fully built DOM tree will look like this. Okay. Actually, previously there were no specific parsing algorithms, and nowadays the in HTML5 they have come up with a new algorithm, and today all modern browsers are using the same algorithm to work on their DOM tree, and this is parsing. And the next step is this DOM tree gets converted into another tree and that's called the render tree. And here what happens is the blocks gets visual attributes. For example, the HTML the HTML element, it will be converted to a block box. These are similar to CSS block models. I hope you all understand what CSS block model is. Okay, that HTML gets converted to a block box, then HTML paragraph to a block box, then span element to an inline box, and so and so and so. And in the render tree, what actually happens is the elements which are not which have a display none won't be rendered in the render tree. The elements which are out of the regular flow of document, for example, a fixed position or absolute position, blocks will not be rendered in this step. Another thing is the elements which are inside the head tag, it won't be rendered in this step. Just only blocks are created. Block or block boxes are just blocks, and lane boxes will stack one by the next.
So if it is an inline box, the next item will be on the showing on the right. And if it is a block box, it will go to the next line.
And the next is the DOM tree is created. The browser has to resolve the styles, user-defined styles, all the inline styles, whatever it may be. The browser has to resolve styles, and what happens is that it has to recursively traverse through each and every node. Node means that DOM element, that stuffs which already created, and it has to apply each and every style. I think it's a bit of a CPU consuming thing. A lot amount of CPU memory will be consumed in this step, and browsers usually do some techniques to lower the use of CPUs. For example, some elements share same style. If you say, if I have an element whose parent is same, if I have elements with a same parent and no specific rules are defined in my CSS, or any inline styles or something like that is not defined, then the browser shares the style. That way, so that the processing will be a bit more faster. Another method is browser creates indexes of its large DOM tree. It makes small indexes of its large tree, and so that traversing will be easy. Here the style got resolved, and the next step is layout. Actually, in this step, the blocks gets its dimensions and positions. All the dimensions are calculated, and the position is also given in this step. And moving on to next step is the painting, and finally the positioned element, with the help of the operating system's UI capability, gets painted into the browser. In the painting step, we have another thing called Z-index, that third dimension of the blocks. We can stack one above the other, And usually browser uses something called a stack to arrange these layers one above the other, the values one above the other, which comes to the front, which comes to next, and here the browser paints our web page will be seen, and we can see. Okay, does it stops here? No, never. Because as we already said, it's something HTML is called reentrant language, or HTML is reentrant. And just imagine I have a menu, and once I click that menu, something will be, or sub menu will be dropping down. Then the browser have to re-render it. Here triggers the relayouts and repaints. Okay, relayout happens when we change the geometric attributes of the node. If I change width or height, something like that, relayout will be happening. And in modern browsers, what actually they does is they use a system called dirty bit system. And if our changes are lower in our nodes, say towards the end of a tree or something like that, then the browser uses that system, that dirty bit system. Just that node will be changed. If my changes is upper in my hierarchy, then the browser has to re-render the full DOM tree. This process have to take place. It's definitely layouting, re-layouting, and repaint as it's just if you change a color, background color or something like that, the browser will just repaint that section only. That's what happens in repaint and relayout. Okay, then for you, some UI developers or front-end developers, some tips to avoid repaint or relayouts, or to minimize the effect of these things. First of all, never ever try to query an element. Never try to query element like here. It's a jQuery $div.width. What happens is browser will remain or all the geometric attributes will be there in the browser cache. And if I query something like this div, then it has to go through all the divs, need to restructure these things, and it's a bit of we can make what happens actually it's time consuming. Yeah, the browser has to flush out all its previous cache, and then needs actually it's not cache, it's in the memory. The browser has to flush out all these things and recalculates this, and obviously it will take time. Another thing is it will be better to make changes in a node which is not displayed, because as we already mentioned, a node which is not displayed will not be there in the render tree. That's happened. Okay, and nowadays we use a lot of animations in our web pages, and what happens is animations are if you look at your memory or CPU, it will just keep fluctuating. And while using animations, please do this thing, use absolute position or fixed position node to animate. Okay, and finally today not much developers do all these things. Replacing lines, never. Our developers usually write styles in CSS sheets, and okay, try to keep changes lower in the tree. Yeah, that's and that's all for the browser's high-level architecture and main flow. And just a quick recap on these things. Yeah, next. Yeah, hope you already know all these stuffs, the browser's components, the networking JS interpreter, your backend, rendering engine, browser engine, user interface, and data persistence layer. Then that next about that render engines. Then what happens when a user clicks or user queries a URL? Then comes the parsing, that conversion of that HTML to a DOM element using that tokenizer and a parser. Then next is the render creation, where the DOM element gets converted to a tree called render tree. Then the browser resolves the styles, and a layout is created, and finally the output gets painted to the browser. And finally, when what happens when we make some changes or things, and the do's and don'ts. Hope any questions or then
So if you don't have any questions,
then
everything is new.
everything. And I'm inviting Mr. Rahul to have a session on HTML5 and
So actually, why the previous session was that is, if we could understand what exactly is happening within that, we'll be able to resolve issues quickly. That is, many times what happens is that developer finds a bug, but he do not know why actually the bug occurred, and finally somehow he will fix it, and still they do not know how I fixed the issue. So understanding these type of basic would surely help us to view these in a different angle. And whenever something happens, oh, this is how it works. So many developers actually miss these type of basics, but they will. When we have these basics, we will be able to adapt all the new changes and updates because our basement is strong.
Okay. So good evening all, and in this session we are going to discuss about HTML5, and myself Rahul, and I work as a UI developer in DBG. So coming to the HTML5, in fact we are going to discuss about HTML5. Before that, I think everyone know what HTML is, and I think I don't need to explain in detail about HTML. It's actually a behind the scene coding language that is used to make a stuff to see online, that is to see something in a browser. So HTML is, then coming to HTML5. So what is HTML5? It's simple HTML, but it is the latest version of HTML that was released on 2008. But still it is under the working draft, but we can expect it as to release by the end of the year. We can accept it as a standard for developing web pages. So it is a new standard of HTML, and it is designed to deliver almost everything that you want. It is also cross-platform. It is device independent. It is compatible in every devices. So the HTML5 comes with many new advanced features that we can look into in the later slides, and it is so user-friendly as well. So before going into details about the advanced features, just we can go through the different versions of HTML. that we discussed in the earlier session, that is from HTML1 to HTML5. The HTML5 was released on 2009, and before that we have 4 versions with new components, new elements added to that versions. Similar to HTML, we have CSS, different versions of CSS up to CSS3. Different new elements and new features have been added to this CSS. So before going into the HTML5 components, let's discuss about the removed elements in HTML5. These are some of the removed elements. We have lots and lots of removed elements from HTML5, and these are some of the HTML elements that we removed in HTML5. And then comes the difference between HTML4, maybe the previous version and the latest version. And the HTML5 comes with a simplified syntax when compared to the previous versions. It comes with many new features, new components, new elements that we can use to make our web page more organized and more neat. That means we can code in a better way by using these tags. For example, we have different tags in HTML5 such as canvas, header, footer, navigation section, menu, figure tag, audio tag, video tag, and so many components have been added in HTML5. And coming to the browser support in HTML5. So HTML5 is the browser support for HTML5. That means the only modern browsers support HTML elements. So that is one of the biggest disadvantage of HTML5. But we can hack it. We can use some polyfills to make this HTML5 element work in lower version browsers. So HTML5 is not an official standard, not yet an official standard, and no new browsers have a full support of HTML elements. And also all the major vendors, all the major browsers are working on it to continue to add the new HTML features or HTML elements in the later version. That means in the modern versions. So this is a basic thing that means the HTML document type. Simple, just to define it as doc type HTML. In the earlier versions, we need to specify a long set of code to make it work. So this is a basic layout. Just need to specify HTML header, that means a head tag, body tag, and similar way.
So HTML5 is nothing different, but just a few new tags got introduced. We just need to understand, oh, these are the new tags, and we can use this tag for this purpose. And that is the only difference between HTML previous version and new version.
The HTML5 makes it more organized. We can do it very quickly.
And it will be very easy for us to implement it.
Yeah.
So everyone can go and start doing coding in HTML5 actually. It is not something new.
Yeah. So exploring HTML, we can look into the different, we can explore the HTML. So HTML5 is lightweight. We can say it lightweight. Why? Because the line of code is decreased. And it is liquid layout. It can work on smartphones. It can work on tablet, laptops. It's cross-platform, interactive, and semantic. Then comes the elements that is being newly added in HTML5. These are some of the components, some of the elements. We have lots and lots of components, lots and lots of elements added to HTML5. So these are some of the components. That means audio, video tag, header tag, footer tag, article, aside, audio, canvas, command, so and so. So we have specific tags to differentiate the web page sections. That means in HTML5, for example, if you want to define a header section, we can use header tag. If you want to define a footer section, we can use a footer tag. Earlier, it was not possible. We have to define a division and apply a class or ID. This is header. This is footer. So in HTML5, we can use these tags: header, footer, audio, video, everything. And some of the other features of HTML5 is creating editable content. So the content can be editable in the output. That means if we place some content inside a code and that code is being rendered by the browser, and we can see that in our browser, that output is seen in our browser. So what if you want to edit that particular content? We can make it possible in HTML5 by defining that content to be editable. This is a syntax. This is a syntax of editable content. That element and content editable and the value. We need to set the value to true. So we can edit that content inside a browser. The element is just an HTML element, whether it is a p tag or division tag or whatever it be. So if we are giving it as a null value, it is not editable. If you want to make it editable, we need to set the value true.
Okay, so previously we have to write a JavaScript to make it editable or change it as a input box.
Yeah.
So right now it is not required.
Yeah. We need to just set the value true, and it makes that content editable.
Okay. So if it is a p tag, full paragraph will be
can be editable.
Okay.
So
div also.
Division also it is possible. That's why it's an element. We can do in any element. Similar way, there is a spell check component, spell check feature in HTML5 that is something similar to word checking. Similar to in Microsoft Word, when we type a meaningless word, it will show a underline that this is not in the dictionary, and so that feature is also available in HTML5. Just need to specify the value true.
Okay,
for that,
so if it is an input box or a text area,
text area.
Whenever we type it, it will show.
Yeah, in the text area, just text area spell check true. It will make that dictionary checking. So the next come custom data attribute. These are the custom data attribute that can be used for data manipulation. That means it consists of two parts. That is attribute name and attribute value. This attribute name is this is the attribute name. That means data hyphen text. That is user defined. The text is user defined. We can define anything. That is name, that comes city, that comes language, or whatever. Only thing while defining this data attribute you have to keep in mind is that you should not use an uppercase letter. That means the D and N. The first letter should be, in fact, the whole letter should be in small letters. So the client side storage, it is same as cookies. In fact, the session storage has a little bit more storage capacity, but it is not persistent. Once the browser is closed, the data will be lost. But the local storage also, it will be stored in the user storage space. Session storage is not persistent. Then comes the HTML canvas. It is actually used to draw graphics in a web page. So HTML element to draw graphics on the fly. That means we can use JavaScript to draw graphics in a canvas. Canvas acts as a container where we can draw graphics using a JavaScript. We can draw sort of drawing paths, boxes, circles, add images, everything you want. And also the inline SVG. SVG is actually a scalable vector graphics. It's a vector graphics where we can scale it. Actually, how it does is that this SVG format is an XML for this graphics in XML format, and the different properties is set inside that XML format. Once we export, once we save as a file or a image or a vector image that we created in some vector editing tools, once it is exported as SVG format, and we can import that SVG format inside our web page, similar way that we were using to import the JPEG image or a PNG image. Similar way we can import that SVG format inside our web page. This SVG format will be in XML file. So we can change some properties in that XML file. We can change the colors of the boxes that we created inside that XML file. So 2D and 3D both are supported in HTML5. SVG is 2D graphics and WebGL is 3D graphics. WebGL is actually a web-based graphic library that supports 3D graphics. It is maintained and designed by Norris Group. And next comes a geolocation. This is another interesting feature that in HTML5, this is an API which is used to plot or which is used to get the end user's location. So for that we need to give a simple script. It will get the longitude and latitude position of a particular user unless the user have to give the permission. User have to approve it. So another feature is or we can say it as a tag. It's a video tag. So in the previous versions of HTML, if you want to show a video in our browser, we need to do a lot of stuff to make it work in a browser. We need to embed that code. We need to set some parameters to make it work. So in HTML5, we have a video tag that is simple as just as importing a image, src, and so on path that will make that image appear in our browser. Similar way, we can use a video tag to display a particular video in our web page.
So does it need that Flash player?
No. It doesn't need any Flash player. Earlier version, we need to embed a plugin, Flash player, Rail player, or video player of different vendors to make a video work in HTML. In this video tag is not necessary. So, what are the reasons for using HTML5? So, there are so many reasons why we should use HTML5. Accessibility, video, audio support, document type, clean code. That means lots and lots of features is being added in HTML5 that makes us easy to code and that makes it user friendly. That is one of the major reason why we should use HTML5. So legacy and the cross browser support. So what actually this is that HTML5 is rendered only in modern browsers, but we cannot neglect the older browsers, the previous version browsers. Why? Because is that we may not be knowing the what browser the end user uses. So we need, if we are developing a web page in using HTML5, we need to make work in lower version browsers. Otherwise, the customer, the end user will not be accessing. If I am popping a message, you have to download the modern version browser only, then you can access my site. Certainly, sometimes that end user may not be accessing my site. He or she may find it difficult to download the newer version browser to access my site. So we have to make it work in lower version browser as well. So we can use some polyfills or hacks to make the new tags, a new HTML tag to work in lower version browsers. So mobile.
Let's go ahead. So this is just a script that we need to add in our code at the header. So that even if you use Canvas or any new HTML5 tags, it will work in the previous browsers.
Previous version browsers.
Okay. So what does it actually do?
It actually converts the tags, the new tags, to make it recognize that the lower version browser will identify that it is a
Okay, so these guys might have written the code, to convert the newer version HTML5 tags to the old version code.
IE6 is, I think it's not but yeah, okay. HTML.
Actually, what does this script does is older versions of browser doesn't know what a header tag is or a footer tag or something like that. And what this does is it's just a JavaScript, is creating an element on the fly. It's creating an element, document.create element header, so that the browser knows there's an element called header and it processes. And in a CSS, we usually keep header, footer, video, and stuff like that to display block. It's simple.
Next comes the reason for why we use it continues and mobile. So the people who access website, people who access mobile application increasing day by day. So we need to make a particular website that we are developing to work in every device, handheld device, whether it is small device or laptop or tablet, everything. We need to make it work in every handheld devices. So by using HTML5 and CSS3, we can make web page more responsive and more compatible in in handheld device, in smaller device, tablet, anywhere. So in fact, we can conclude that in the web industry, in the web standards, HTML is the future, and we have to learn it and we have to get with it. So welcome to the future. So that is about the HTML. That's the end of this session, and we can just go to just a recap of what we were discussing in this session.
I think some of them were taking some notes, but you were quickly traversing the slides, right? So,
okay, we were discussing about HTML. What is HTML and the different features, the versions of CSS, the removed elements in the previous versions, and the difference between the previous version and the present version, that is HTML5, and the about the browser support and the document type, and exploring some of the new features and new elements and new features.
could you please slow down a bit?
Slow down, okay.
It's very fast.
Okay. Exploring the client-side storage, session storage, local storage, about a new component called HTML Canvas, SVG, 2D, 3D graphics, and the geolocation API, video tag, and the reasons behind why we should use HTML5. Yeah, and that's the end of the session. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Shamir B to take the next session.
Thank you, Rahul. In this session, we will discuss some basic CSS properties and new tools. I'm Shamir, FrontEnd Development in DBG. We can go through some of the important features in CSS3. Next. There are flexbox, multi-column layout, RGBA, shadows, gradient, and border image. And the first one is flexbox. What is flexbox? Flexbox is a CSS set of CSS property that allow to create flexible layout, and it help us to make flexible columns. See, there is display flex. That is a new property of display. Then let's see how it's work. This flexbox, we are paying this display flex. Then we change the flex direction row to column. Then we can arrange the column wise. Then we change the flex item to flex align self to flex start. Then the content wise it's going down and just scroll down like this, and we can change flex end. Then we can align like this. Stretch. No, let's stretch.
So this is just a new CSS property that can be assigned to a div or any element, and right?
Yeah.
And whatever is inside that, it will get automatically adjusted.
Yeah, align. This as per the content, the blocks are aligned. So the next.
What happens is previously we were having only display block, inline block, and stuff like that, and creating equal height columns was a bit of a tedious process. And with the help of this, yeah, this is what we can have. And the property is display flex. And sorry, yeah, it's there.
And the display flex.
Display inline, display block, display none. Like that, a new feature is the display flex. And you can say that direction row
or column.
So based on that, whatever comes within that
Yeah. Actually, now we are using some grid systems like Bootstrap grid or something like that. With the help of this flexible column layout, flex display flex, it's simple to create a grid system.
Okay, it will be have better control over this.
Yeah, definitely with a bit of code.
Okay, just a line of code, display flex, and you are mentioning management. So whatever containers are within that outer box will get aligned based on.
Next one. So the next one is multi-column layout.
So we didn't get flexbox is? It is just a new property, right?
Yeah. The next one is multi-column layout. Previously we were using multiple div to the align multiple div tag to align the columns. Now we can use we can define multiple column in single div. Here the column count we can here we can mention the number of column and then the gap of the column, then plus the rule. Let's see how it's work. Yeah, this one. See, these are the columns. We mentioned there column number 3, then this 3, then the dotted block for the rule. These are the rules. Then the gap of the column is this one.
Okay, so it is just like a news portal. That is, when we are creating a news portal, the content has to be divided into 3 columns. Yeah. Previously, we were doing like prepared divs, and that is content is placed inside each div.
Divs.
If you have a look at that code, it's just already one div.
Content copied in one div.
And we have specified the column count 3.
Okay.
And that column rule 2 with the dotted black is nothing green. This.
Okay, so previously that is when the content becomes dynamic, we were facing difficulty. That is how much content should be shown in the first column and the second column. So I hope that this will solve that issue.
Yeah.
So any div span.
Div span, any HTML element we can apply this.
Okay.
And the next one is RGBA. This for color transparency. Here the RGBAs are red, green, blue colors, and the last one is the transparency. That produces the transparency that we can apply in color and the background color. See, one more. Point one. Point one.
That color is red.
Transparency is working.
Control over the alpha layer. One thing here is
previously for transparency we were using opacity, and what actually the difference between this alpha layer and opacity is that opacity will be working on the child nodes also. If I have a parent div and specified an opacity of 0.5 or something, all the nodes contained within will also get affected. But with this, it will not be like that. Only that particular node will get affected. It's the
So we can apply inside the text also. Hello. Now the text also transparent.
Okay, previously we were using images for
PNG images for this.
But right now it can be CSS properties.
The next one is shadow. This shadow property we can implement shadow for any element. This the text shadow and the box shadow. These are same like these 2 values for horizontal and vertical length of the shadow, and this for the blur value, and this is the color of the shadow. See the example. See. Yeah. Change it. Great. I don't know. Red note. So the shadow is changed into red. Then the text also we can change. Green. See. So this is the shadow property. The next one is
Shadow. Previously there was no shadow property in CSS.
yeah there, but we can.
So in CSS2 we had that text shadow, but no box shadow.
So next one is gradient. CS provides us two type of gradients, the linear and the radial. The radial goes, sorry, the linear goes left, right, top, bottom, and the diagonal, and this radial is the centralized. See here the linear and the radial. First, these are the colors, not image. This red and blue. Change to green. This is yellow. Previously we were using images for this gradient. Now we can use in the CSS3. Then the next one is border image. Border image we can use images as borders, and we can use here color changer. Image stretch want round. We can use two types, stretch and round. Round, then the image take fully like this. Then the stretch, just selecting the stretch area. So this border image border property. So this, okay. Anyway. So these are the new properties in CSS3. So you have any questions? So let's have a recap. Flexbox for flexible layout, and the second one multi-column layout for column. Then third one RGBA color for background transparency, and next shadow for the shadow for an element. Next gradient for background. So concluding my session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Shamir. So I think that's what we were able to discuss on this Coffee DBG, because it is just an entry level on HTML5 and CSS3, and we will be having a couple more upcoming sessions where we discuss. We plan to discuss about how to have a performance optimized website and many other advanced features of HTML5 and CSS3. So hope this. I think all the companies are in Onam celebrations, and today actually there were around 50 or 55 registrations, but I can see only less than 10 participants. Okay, that's fine. But we also have this program live, so if some of your friends had missed this session, you can surely tell them to watch our live video. And Coffee DBG is also the space to make friends, to know people who are working on the same domain. If you have some questions in the sections that you work on, that is to clarify or to get some solutions, you can feel free to ask that. And even if we do not tell that we know everything, but we will try to research and get you the answers for that. So is there anything that you would like to discuss? So was this session useful? Okay. So do you want to have a whole recap of what we discussed today? Just, is there someone? So initially we just started with a TechBites where we discussed about some latest advancements that happen or something that is about to get released. Windows 9 is planned to be released, or C++ 14 that is about to come, and some wearable devices or some new gadgets. Then what did we discuss? Then there was transparent. Then transparent solar panels.
HTML5 is a cross-platform language. So if I use a source code and create a website for PC browsers, it will be automatically synchronized for mobile browsers.
That is, you mean whether it will be responsive? Responsive designs, that is something that we have to do in CSS. That is HTML5 help us to do it easily.
If I am right, you asked about once I create a website in HTML, if it works in cross device. Yeah, definitely it will work. Yeah, in any device, because HTML is rendered through browsers. And if you want something like a responsive website, then we have to work on CSS, and with the help of CSS media queries, we can make cross different screen sizes. These this browser this website will respond to different screen sizes. Okay, we have actually I'm not sure whether you have a look on our website digitalbrandgroup.com. Just have a look. It's a responsive one.
Actually, that website got Shiraz was did that website and it got different awards, CSS awards, and what was the last award? Web Design Firms Award. Yeah. Okay. So responsive design is just like that CSS 3 introduces media queries, right? It helps us to identify what browser it is queried from, and then we can decide which set of HTML should be rendered in that browser. It is not like it will automatically. That is, if we develop a bigger.
What actually media query does is it knows the browser's viewport size from where. Okay, for example, if it's a Retina display, if its viewport size is around 1000 or 1200, and we can give a special set of CSS for these particular constraints. That what make media queries.
So to build a responsive website, we actually have to design it for each and every viewport size, and then slice it and use this media query to load this thing. That is, hopefully we will have a session on responsive design in future in within next couple of Coffee DBGs.
This is the basis. This is a tri-series session, and this is the starting one, and we'll be dealing with responsive websites, bootstrap, and stuff like that. And surely you have to come and attend that.
Okay. So after TechBites, we just went through, what was it? What was the first session? Evolution, and we just saw that Tim Berners-Lee, he was the one who thought about having websites. That is something that can be accessed from home or some other places. Then we went through the history, how. So similarly, we went through the JavaScript history last time. That is JavaScript. Hope you know that is it is ECMA script right now, right? And initially it was known as Mocha. the first version, it was developed for Netscape Navigator. So all those things also we discussed in the previous sessions. As most of you missed the previous session, I just gave that information. So similarly, we went through the HTML and history, and we identified that newer version of HTML is nothing else, just introduction of some new tag. We just need to identify that tag and use it. Initially, there was no position absolute or that is in. For example, image tag itself was not there initially. That is why all the websites in the initial period was just some hypertext or some text content. Then once the image tag got introduced, it is some text content, and I will have a bigger image there, because it just has a alt property, or it doesn't have any other tags like what is the size or. And finally on HTML5 we got the video tag. Previously we didn't have the video tag. So newer version of HTML is just simple, some new tags, and we should be able to adapt to the changes easily. So we do not have to fear the new version of HTML. And after the evolution, we went through the browser architecture, where we discussed that is how a website get queried, and what actually happens after somebody types in www.google.com. It will, that is as he said, it will go to the DNS server and identify what is the IP address of that, and then hop to that server. And in that server, actually there is someone who is listening to that port 80. That is a web server. It can be Apache. So web server receive that request, check it in the server whether it is available in that folder. So HTTP or web server will have a configuration file, something called httpd.conf, where it is mentioned that this, if the request is coming in this way, go to this folder and get a default file .html or index.html, something default. And if it is a particular .php file or something, just get it. And if it is a PHP, use PHP engine, pass it, generate HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and send it back. That is what it is doing. Any script, server-side scripting, what it does is it just generate HTML, JavaScript, CSS, etc. and along with the resources, images, if there is something, all those resources are sent back to the requested client or requested browser. And we came to we looked over how actually it get displayed, and this, it is browser's responsibility to render it and show it to the user. And browser has different sections, that is the UI element and the rendering engine and all those things. We went through that, right? Then we went through the HTML properties, or that is what is new in HTML. Fine. And then CSS3, some new stuff like flex. So no questions? Okay. And we have a Facebook page, that is if you are not available in that Facebook page, you can
some new elements. HTML5 basically contains of the new tags and elements and JavaScripts mostly.
Yeah,
APIs.
There are a lot of JavaScript APIs like that geolocation. We have a geolocation API, and if you are a mobile developer, then it have a battery status API, a vibrator API, and that geolocation can also be used for mobile developers. And there are lots and lots of APIs.
And what actually this JavaScript does is just JavaScript uses an API of DOM or the browser, that is DOM element API, and try to manipulate, that is, or move this from that, etc., etc. And this DOM manipulation happens using JavaScript because JavaScript uses an API of that DOM, and it is different for each individual browser. So that is the reason why JavaScript doesn't work on doesn't work on all the browsers in the same way. That is, some browsers, they might be having some bugs in their DOM API, and due to that reason it might not work. Okay, so I think that's all for the, and Coffee DBG is also for making friends, so you can just network with each other and understand, and if there is any questions, you can surely contact us. Okay, thank you.